Hi. Thanks for coming. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my experiences and my sort of lessons in life and business coming from the perspective of an entrepreneur, an athlete, and a family man, you know, over the course of my little speck of time on the planet. So this story starts on November 3rd, 2004, which was the second night that I was in Argentina. I had decided to leave Los Angeles the day before in search of opportunity, adventure, and I had a goal. And my goal was to really learn Spanish fluently and then to learn Portuguese sort of on my way back and then backpack through Latin America looking for opportunity. And on that night, the second night that I was in Buenos Aires, I met some guys at the hostel, Patrick and Patrick from Australia. And Patrick had this brilliant idea, you know, let's go to a dance club, right? I was like, obviously, we're in Buenos Aires, Latin America, people dance, right? So we go there and neither of them spoke Spanish, right? And they're like, well, we know you speak Spanish, so you got to get us in the club, right? And I thought, okay, how do I do this? What's the best way to go about this? So I walk up to the bouncer, who's, you know, this big, you know, imposing looking dude. And I say, ¿Cuánto cuesta para entrar? and he just looked at me like, I can't believe este pinche gringo, right? I can't believe I have to deal with this gringo. He's an idiot. And he's like, no, es una fiesta privada. It's a private party. And I'm like, and I think to myself, because I know I'm understanding what he's saying, I think to myself, should I acknowledge? And so I got my wallet out and I said, ¿Cuánto cuesta? 20 pesos? And I pulled out 20 pesos. And I just sort of started pushing money into his chest. And he said, no, privado, no se puede entrar. You can't come in, it's a private party. And then I thought, okay, so 40 pesos, right? And I just kind of kept increasing that amount of money. And he's like, no, privado. And so this iteration continued a little bit. And then he was like, you know, he went and got a manager. And then they're like yelling at me, no. And I'm going, well, but why? I don't understand. I don't speak good Spanish. I'm a dumb gringo. And they were like, fine, just go in. So that's lesson number one, be persistent. I didn't even have to pay, by the way. They didn't even take my money. They were just like, stop annoying us, just go in and dance. So lesson number one, be persistent. And persistence has been something that's paid off repeatedly in my life from my days as a swimmer, you know, just repeating over and over and over again, just getting my angle of the arm position right, just getting myself psyched up before a race. And in my businesses, you know, we had the brilliant idea when we started the wine business to start with free wine tastings. And I say brilliant because it was actually the dumbest idea pretty much of all time. Because, you know, in our wisdom, it was like, oh, free, you know, everyone's gonna come. And if we get lots of people means more sales. But it turns out that free is pretty much the price that you want to charge if you want to get people who don't want to spend money, right? So we had to go through a lot of different iterations, being very persistent over time, from charging $10 to $20 up to now $40 and $45 to finally get the right demographic of person in, get the right service, figure out how to distribute that money to different partners and affiliates and so forth. So being persistent has paid off in many ways. So I'm at the club and I'm walking in and I'm taking in this scene, right? So we just got in the door, right? And it's like 1,000 people. It's a Wednesday night, by the way. Wednesday night, 1,000 people dancing. The Latins in the room are smiling. They know how it is. And I'm just absorbing this amazing scene of people, you know, getting down at, you know, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday night. And later on in the evening, around 2 o'clock, I'm walking out of the bathroom. And as I'm walking out of the bathroom, there's this girl seated on this ledge over here to my left. And as I walk by her, you know, she grabs my arm and she says, disculpame, pero rompí el taco de mi zapato. ¿Me puedes ayudar a romper el otro? Which means, excuse me, but I broke the heel of my shoe. Can you help me out and break the other one? And I thought that's That's interesting. So the next lesson is learn to spot opportunity. Okay? So did I know what the future held with this girl? No. Did I know that she was interested? Maybe. Did I know really much beyond the fact that she initiated a conversation with me? No. But in learning to spot opportunity, subtle cues sometimes need to be given too much value, right? And so in her stopping me, she didn't choose to stop everybody. She chose to stop me, right? So I talked to this girl, and the upshot of it is that she starts speaking to me, and she starts making fun of me a little bit. Wait, back to opportunities real quick. So in spotting this opportunity, this was like the first of just so many opportunities in Argentina. This was 2004. They were coming off of an economic crisis. The peso, like a steak dinner was $8, and I'm talking including wine and dessert. Real estate was like they were giving it away. There was no such thing as Starbucks. The tourism industry was just barely growing, and these were just a few of the opportunities that one could see immediately upon sort of walking off the plane in Buenos Aires. And those opportunities and spotting those opportunities was sort of a theme of my existence and persistence in Buenos Aires. So back at the club, and I'm talking to her, and she's introducing me to her friends. She came with a group of friends. They're all attorneys, by the way. They're all lawyers, and they're out partying on Wednesday night at 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is cultural lesson, right? So she's introduced me to her friends, and they're all talking to me, and it's a loud dance club, right? And they're speaking to me in Argentine Spanish, which is an accent I'm totally unfamiliar with. And it's one of those, right? And they're screaming in my ear, and I have no idea what they're saying. And I'm trying to be positive, and I'm trying to, engage them in conversation. And what do you do in a situation like that, where you literally can't understand anything anyone's saying? You smile and nod, right? So they're yelling in my ear, and I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah, okay, great, yeah, awesome. And I have no idea, they could be like, I can't believe you gringo, you're in our country, and you're here to take our women, or something like that, something, awful. And I'm like, absolutely, yeah, sure, cool. And that's sort of the next lesson. The next lesson is choose to be positive, right? Because as an entrepreneur, as a family man, as a person who wants a relationship, as an athlete who has a goal, you are confronted all the time with these obstacles that are just going to beat you down. You have 5 a.m. swim practice, and you already had, 40,000 meters of training in the previous 2 days. You don't want to get up. Choose to be positive. Choose to go and just know that the water is going to be cold when you get in, but know that you can accomplish something great that day. Figure out how to spin it so that you can be smiling and you can be upbeat. So the other thing about choosing to be positive is that it's a choice, okay? Knowing that I can control the way that I feel about things. Knowing that if my child cries, that I can choose to either get angry or make a game out of it. Knowing that if I have an upset customer, that this is actually one of the best opportunities to display customer service that can come across my desk in a day, is how I believe that I've been able to turn a lot of negative situations into positive situations. Phil Jackson is a guy whose reading I admire quite a bit, and he always talks about how to stay positive. And for him, staying positive is really is about staying in the moment and being present, right? So Phil Jackson talks about, you make a bad play, you throw the ball out of bounds, doesn't matter, it's done, right? Get up, play the next play, right? You hit a shot, doesn't matter, get up, play the next play. And being in the moment, knowing that this customer's angry right now, or we just put $100,000 in the bank in the last week, or we have to deal with this regulatory issue that's just not going away. These are all situations in which I can choose to react positively, and I can stay in the moment and focus on the path that I need to take forward, right? So a couple weeks after the club, I'm walking around with this girl, and we were seeing each other a couple times a week for those 4, 5, 6 weeks. after the club. And it's a Sunday. It's a beautiful sunny day in Buenos Aires. And we're walking through a neighborhood called Puerto Madero. And Puerto Madero, it's the port sort of district. There's a bunch of restaurants. It's a really, cool sort of area. And we got lunch, and after lunch, we found this really nice grass expanse, and we're sitting and enjoying the sun, and we're chatting, and, feeling in love and all that sort of stuff. And it occurred to me, because it'd been like 5 weeks, and I had only really planned on staying for maybe 7 or 8 weeks. I'm like, oh, this is great, but, what are we doing, right? And I'm turning to her and I'm asking her, like, okay, but seriously, like, what are we doing? And I'll never forget, she said to me, disfrutamos lo de ahora y después sufrimos, which means let's enjoy what we have now and we'll suffer later, right? And I thought that really summed up these lessons of presence so well. Presence and positivity, but also implies a couple of other lessons, which is, do what works. And don't be afraid to fail. So in her saying that to me, she was actually acknowledging the fact first that, we have something that's super positive. We both really enjoy spending time with each other. It's amazing, right? And for those of you who have had that experience, you know that that's amazing. Like, why would we throw that away? Just because maybe it's going to disappear a few weeks from now. But we can't predict the future. And in saying that we will suffer later, we may suffer later, we're acknowledging the fact also that we can fail and owning the fact that failure is a distinct possibility. And in owning the possibility of failure, you're free to make better choices, right? Choices that are going to make every day a better day in this process. So it's sort of being present, doing what works, and not being afraid to failure, but acknowledging that failure is possible. So over the next 10 years, I lived in Argentina. Her name is Lourdes, many of you know her. She's now my wife. We started the wine business together. We spotted the opportunity in Mendoza. We went to Mendoza in 2006. We saw all of the incredible wine that was there. No one was doing anything with it. It was a great price. It was great quality. And there was this glaring opportunity. And since then, I was able to start a charity and a bilingual podcast and then a steak restaurant that was an add-on to the wine business. So there was all this opportunity. And I think through staying positive and being present and spotting opportunities and being persistent, all these different opportunities were able to come to fruition. And that wine business now was grown from something that, was a tiny little table that fit barely 8 people in my apartment to now a tasting room in Palermo that seats 40 people and has a staff of 10 that run the business. So I'm really thankful for that. And along the way, in about 2012, we had been married for a couple years at that point, and Lourdes got pregnant. And we were really excited because, it's something we had planned on. And so we go, as you go and you have an ultrasound, right? So like 6 or 7 or 8 weeks into the pregnancy, we go to the ultrasound, we walk into the clinic, and we walk into the waiting room, and there's this little waiting room of people outside the exam room, and we sit down. And the first thing that was odd was that we could hear everything that was going on in the exam room. Like, Señora Perez, your baby is fine. We can hear the heartbeat. And we're like, oh, we can hear that. That's odd. Well, at least it's not a more invasive procedure where people can hear us with intimate details, right? So we go into the exam room, and she's lying here, right? And her head is there facing me. And I'm on this side of the table, and the tech is on the other side of the table with the screen also facing me. And they put the goo on her belly, and they start examining and so forth. And you can see heartbeats, and you can hear these really strange whooshing sounds. And I'm looking at this image, and I'm like, what is that? What is that? It doesn't look like anything. It doesn't look human at all, and I don't understand. And the tech, after like 5 minutes of examining, she's very silent. She's not saying anything. And I'm thinking to myself, what's going on, right? And she turns around and she goes, bueno, te cuento. Acá tenés plan A. Y acá tenés plan B. And I've been in Argentina for 8 years at this point, and my Spanish is, I think, fluent. And I'm like, what are you saying? What does that mean? She goes, well, Bueno, lo que pasa es que acá tenés uno y acá tenés otro. Here you have one and here you have another. And again, I was like, okay, can we stop speaking in code? What do you mean, right? I said, does that mean we have twins? And by this point, my wife is already crying, right? And I'm like anxious and on the, I'm ready to have a seizure here, right? And she goes, yes, mellizos, twins. And I'm like, okay, so I don't want you to be offended at the next thing I'm gonna say, but how long have you had your job for? And she goes, 18 years. And I'm like, because you're really sure, like 100% sure that it's twins and you didn't make a mistake? Because that's really not something that you want them to make a mistake about, right? And she's like, yeah, I'm really 100% sure that you're gonna have twins. And then I started crying and my wife started laughing. For good reasons. And that leads me to sort of the last lesson that I wanted to talk about, which is that things are never gonna end up the way you planned them, right? So we walked in thinking we were gonna have one baby, and we walked out knowing that we were gonna have two. And being able to roll with the punches like that is critical, not just for entrepreneurial success, but family success and business success, career success, and success in general, because you can plan as much as you want, and there's lots of quotes about planning and the essentiality of it and whether they're useful or not, but I think that there's two that I really like. One is Eisenhower, who basically said, plans are useless, but planning is essential. And the other one was my swim coach in high school, who said, Danny, this is not, I would be really frustrated in practice. I would have done like 100 repeats and I'm exhausted and I'm not hitting the time that I want, right? And he said, focus on the journey. This is about the journey, not the result. And the interesting thing is I went to Argentina with this goal. I went and I'm like, I'm gonna learn Spanish and I'm gonna go learn Portuguese. And that's the plan, right? And if I hadn't been able to spot that opportunity and be persistent with the different opportunities that I saw and be positive and be open to change, I would not have been able to be successful in my personal life as well as my business life. And so I think it's like the interplay, the interesting iterative nature of saying, here's the 30,000 foot level, here's the big picture, we want to be there in 3 years, right? And then being able to break that down into what am I doing every day? What am I doing in the next 20 minutes? What am I doing in the next hour? What am I doing for the rest of the day? And how does the rest of my week look? How does that build up to make the ultimate goal possible? And then when stuff goes wrong, adjust, right? Because it's never going to come out the way that you thought it was. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I think there's a mic somewhere. Not sure where. No questions? Debo.
I guess I'll talk without the mic, so you can hear me. So you've done a bunch of startups. Can you talk about which was your favorite one to work on and why? I guess in relation to how you've given us some of this life advice.
Oh, favorite. That's such a tough word to interpret. I love them all for different reasons because, so how about highlights of each, right? So the wine business I loved because it was a scalable business that allowed me to actually make money. Other endeavors that I embarked upon were not actually money-making endeavors. And one of them that is a true favorite of mine as well is the Buenos Aires Chili Cook-Off, which is a charity event that I think is still gonna go on with my partners. But basically I got to work with two friends who were also entrepreneurs, and we built, a really cool event that was a cultural exchange and a competition, and it raised money for people less fortunate, and there was all these feel-good reasons for doing it. And we made no money, but a lot of other people benefited a lot from it. And then the podcast was really fun. It just allowed me to be the ham that I am and speak about cultural and philosophical issues that interest me and not really have to worry about some sort of, payoff. And then the steak restaurant because I love steak, just love steak. So, They were all my favorite, but for different reasons. Sir.
What would you say is like the most important factor towards building a team?
Great question. First, I would say that it's knowledge of the business or the goal and the goal's components. So using what I know, right? And this was actually the best example of me building a team quickly and effectively was the steak business, because I had already gone through 5 startups in different industries, right? And when I started the steak business, I was like, okay, here's what we're doing and why. Here are the types of roles we're gonna need. And then actually doing it myself, right? With my business partner. So we actually put on several sort of soft openings or test dinners to make sure that we knew exactly what the operation was. Oh, so like the third time we did it, like, okay, let's do it for 10 people this time instead of 2 people, because that'll probably change things, right? So we do it for 10 people, and all of a sudden the delivery time from the grill to seats is now 15 minutes as opposed to 2 minutes, right? Oh, we didn't realize that beforehand. So first, really know what is the operation that you're doing. And if you don't know, your business partner has to know. And what I mean by know is you have to have done it yourself with your own hands. Because if you haven't gone and sold it, or your business partner hasn't gone and sold it, how are you supposed to teach somebody else how to do that, right? They're gonna come back to you and they're gonna say, oh, the customer said that, the wine's too expensive. And then you go, oh, I've never had to deal with that problem. But if you did it, you will have had that problem before. And you'll have 3 pieces of information that you can use from your toolkit that you're gonna give that salesperson who's gonna be able to then go be effective. That's gonna do 2 things. Number 1, they're gonna be more effective. And number 2, they're gonna trust you more. They're gonna know that you know what you're talking about because you actually lived that experience. And then furthermore, you're actually gonna be able to recruit and interview in the right style to be able to figure out who's gonna be able to deal with a situation like that. Who has the right personality, who has the right background to be able to be effective in that role, whether it's sweeping floors, grilling steaks, selling wine, writing code, whatever. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Matt.
Hey, man. Yeah, sure. I really liked your anecdote about Phil Jackson and taking the play-by-play approach to entrepreneurship. My question is, how do you balance taking that play-by-play perspective with making sure that you're still paying attention to trends and overarching dynamics in your business?
I am a huge fan of 2 things. One is budgeting time and the other is gamification of like everything. So I would often do, sort of the Zuckerberg style, like in the next hour, let's see how many, sales leads we can find. Whoever wins gets like a free bottle of wine. And we literally go and we compete and we build out a Google Doc doing that. And what that does is it enables you to not get super distracted with minutia and also be really efficient. And then you budget time and you say from 11 to 12 or from 2 to 6, I am only going to read industry articles so that I'm up to speed on everything that's going on. And I would also venture to say that it's an iterative process to find that balance, because someday you're going to be hit with a fire drill where it's like, oh my God, the cruise line just called and 50 people are coming in an hour, and you have to drop what you're doing and you need to go, like pull wine boxes, or you need to go do whatever it is you need to do because you got a lot of sales coming in, and that's priority 1. So actually in answering this question, I would say those 2 things, but also knowing the list of priorities. If that thing happens, everything else I drop. If this other thing happens, well, maybe I need to think about it a little bit more. So having your priorities clear, making the minutia into a game so you're really quick about doing that, and then just budget the time and just be like, nope, door shut, reading industry articles, don't talk to me. And then you'll come out and you'll be a happy camper because you got done what you needed to get done. Other questions?
I have two questions.
Yeah, go for it.
So what happened to Patrick and Patrick? That's my first question.
I ran into one of them like 6 months later who was coming back through Buenos Aires, but actually I've never heard from them again. And I wonder from time to time, because those were like the first 2 guys I met in Argentina, what happened to them. But as far as I know, they're back in Australia, doing normal things.
Nice. And my second question is around some of the things that we talked about when we were prepping for your Red Talk. And one was your kids. And they're very funny. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that you could tell us the story about your kids, where maybe you've learned a lesson from them.
I've learned so many lessons from my children. Have children. That's my first message to you guys. Don't be afraid to, take that leap, because so many people I talk to, I'm not having kids and, it's such a pain, and like, isn't a dog the same thing? And it's like, no. Have kids and enjoy them and learn from them, because they are a reflection of you, and we all really are just slightly more evolved children. We really all behave in kind of the same ways. And so, the big lesson, and I was going to try to work this story in. Do you guys want to hear another story or no? Yeah? Okay. So this is the Zen Master story, and I've told some of the people in the room this, but basically last year we moved with 2 kids, to Hasbrook Apartments from Argentina. New language, new space, new culture, new schedule. Wife is not working with me 24/7 anymore. And I'm going to Sage all day, and I'm coming home and I'm pretty stressed out because there's like a whole bunch of smart people who are pretty much kicking my ass every day, right? So I got home and I was a little on edge, and my kids were 16, 18 months at the time, and kids who are that age, they cry. That's just what they do, okay? And I would walk in the door and they would cry, and I'd be like, I can't believe you're crying. How ridiculous is that? And my wife sat me down one day, this was probably in September of last year, and she said, you gotta change something. And I was like, oh my God. She's right, I have to change, that sucks, right? Because I know that when I walk in the door, I'm gonna be angry, because they're gonna cry, right? But like, why am I? So first step was, when am I going to even think about how to solve this problem? Because we're talking about me working on myself, which like, I don't have time to do that. And I was like, wait a sec, maybe I have time to do that. I ride my bike to school and I walk home. That's like 30 minutes a day right there. That's when I'm going to think about it. So I started thinking about it during my commutes. And I started thinking to myself, God, if there were just a way for me to be able to respond calmly and logically and positively every time my kids cried, it would be better for them and for me and for my wife, and everyone would win, and what a wonderful world that would be, right? But like, how would I do that? I don't even know how to do that, because like, when I would start to try to do that, I would just tell myself, be positive, and that wasn't working. And I thought, well, what I would really need to do is I would need to become a Zen master, because if I were a Zen master, I would simply be calm and present at all moments and know that the crying of the child was just what he was experiencing in that moment, and I would let that crying wash over me, right? And it would allow me to respond in a calm and positive way. And I thought, that's ridiculous though, because you need a lifetime to become a Zen master. I don't have a lifetime, I need to be good now, right? So I kept thinking of it on my commutes, what am I gonna do, Zen master? And I thought, wait a minute, do I really need to be a Zen master? Is that really necessary? Couldn't I just pretend to be a Zen master and do the things that a Zen master does? So when my child cries, I simply go, I am a Zen master, and I will respond as if I were a Zen master and hear those cries and let it wash over me and so forth, and write and respond and like, hey, what's bothering you right now? Or hey, do you want to go play a game? Or whatever that positive creative response is that's gonna facilitate, wonderfulness in the house as opposed to negative interactions. And so I started preparing. When I would walk in the house, literally I'd be like locking my bike, and I'd walk in the house and I would say to myself, okay, Zen master hat, right? Open the door, walk in, hear cries, and be like, oh, interesting. Okay, what can we do? And it was really amazing just being able to put myself in that position sort of artificially, but at the same time, once you start practicing it, it becomes incredibly effective for being able to deal with situations that you normally hate dealing with. And I highly recommend this to everybody in the room, and even those who may be watching the video. Like, think about those triggers that you have on a daily basis. Like, maybe that's interacting with your significant other, or with your parents, or with a child, or with a teacher, or with a boss, or whoever that is. But you're gonna have some trigger that you have to deal with on a repeated basis. And taking a step back and being like, okay, that happens. It's guaranteed to happen. I don't have any control over whether it happens or not. Only thing I have control over is myself. That's all I have, and that's all any of us has control over, is one's self, right? So I can choose to be positive. I can choose to do things that are gonna be so how do I do that? I know the trigger's coming. My boss is gonna be like, oh yeah, could you go down and get the TPS reports? And you're gonna be like, hate boss, right? Well, when the boss says that, what am I gonna do that's positive so the boss likes me, so I get my work done and I get on the career path that I wanna get on, right? Is that kind of what you were looking for? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No?
I'll ask you a question.
Oh, Diana.
You talked about the importance of being positive and how that has helped you be successful in life. Can you tell us maybe of a situation or on how being positive is really detrimental or not helpful for some type of situation in business or personal life?
Yeah, so I could approach that abstractly, but that'll be boring. So I'm going to try to think of a story. And the best story I can think of was a negotiation that I had to go through where a guy literally, so we had received a delivery of a huge amount of wine, like nearly $100,000 worth of wine. And it was basically all flawed. And in our early days as entrepreneurs, we were not savvy enough to have built into the contract, like, if the wine you deliver is flawed, you know, we need to have some sort of contingency plan where we don't have to pay or whatever the case may be. So I had to get on the phone with this guy and try to negotiate some sort of settlement, right? And he immediately started yelling at me on the phone and using foul language. And I just kind of stopped and I was like, hey, you know, and I won't use his name, but I won't say the name of the winery either. So foul language, you know, it was your guys' fault because you took too long to take the container out of port, and just saying all kinds of stuff that wasn't true. And I was like, so listen, if you're gonna say things that are patently untrue and you're going to use foul language, I'm gonna have a really hard time coming to a mutually beneficial agreement with you. And I think it's in your best interest because the reputation of your winery is at stake here. People already know who we are. And if we tell other purchasers and other customers of yours that your wine is not what you say it is, then you're gonna have a lot of problems. And I'd rather come to an amicable solution than have to go down that path. Do you think that that's a better way to go? And just in saying it that calmly, completely turned his point of view around as well. Now, I was lucky enough to have a guy who was open to that on the other end, but it was a moment I remember always because we had like prepped so much for that call, knowing that that was the discussion that we were gonna have to have. And he got negative, and I was able to keep it together and stay positive. And we came to a positive agreement because of that. It would have been so easy to fall into that trap of he calls me boludo and I say something worse, and then we just spiral downward, as opposed to just being like, stop, be present. What am I trying to get done here? How can I turn this around and be positive? And there you go.
Great. Well, Dan, thank you so much for closing.
Thank you
out
guys
this
for listening.
conversation.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.